Hi there, welcome back to the Average Person Advice Channel. I'm the Average Guy Nick, and we're at that time of year where we like to do some baking and various other things for the holidays to make some delicious treats and other things. So in this video, I'm going to take you through how to make this type of cookie. It's going to be my first time making it. It's a Ukrainian-based cookie, and it's called a Zirochki, although I'm probably butchering that name. So I'll put a list of the ingredients down below so you can follow along at home if you'd like, and we'll go through it. We'll get to the kitchen now and get started. So the first step to making these cookies, after we get all the ingredients ready, is to get 3 cups of flour into a mixing bowl, and then 2 sticks of butter. And the butter needs to come up to room temperature before we can get started. So we're good with that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the butter here into the flour, and I washed my hands before I did this. And I'd recommend you do the same thing because we're going to get our hands in here and really just get it working. Okay. Really try to get all of the butter off of this. So what we need to do is just mix the butter with the flour, and you want to keep going until you get basically to almost like a sandy-like texture, where you have kind of like a fine crumble, and it will take some time of just mixing. So maybe I will fast forward this. Yep, it's well incorporated. Definitely has that sandy texture. And as you can see, it gets to a pretty fine crumb when you kind of crumble it a bit. Okay, so the next step is we're gonna have 2 eggs, about a cup of sugar, and I put a dash of vanilla in, although you don't have to. Depends if you like, the extra vanilla taste or not. And what we have to do is we have to basically mix this until we get to a nice pale yellow kind of texture. So you can do this by hand with a regular whisk. Personally, I prefer to use some kind of automated whisk, some kind of mixer. So I'm going to give that a shot, and let's see. As you can see, it's getting that nice pale yellow color, but we also want to have the sugar dissolved as much as possible. So I'm going to go a little bit more here. I think that looks very good. So the next step now is we have to basically fold in the egg and sugar mixture into the flour and butter mixture. So I'm going to pour it all in, I think. And one of these spatulas is very, very handy for this. It's getting pretty close now. I'm gonna go just a little more, I think. I'm gonna get something to scrape this in. So the next step is we got to mix 1 teaspoon of baking soda with 2 teaspoons of vinegar in a separate container, bowl, or ramekin. So got 1 teaspoon there. And this is going to get all bubbly and fizzy. And it calls for white vinegar, Now you mix this along with 2 tablespoons of honey and you fold it in to the other mixture that we have going here. So 1 tablespoon of honey. And my honey is getting harder. 2 tablespoons of honey. So I'll put this into this mixture. Don't want to waste any, or as little as possible, so I'm going to scoop it out like this. Scrape it onto here. Get my spatula. And again, we'll just fold it in until it's incorporated. I think that's good. I mean, you generally don't want to overwork dough, regardless if it's cookie dough batter or like bread dough. Depends a bit on the recipe. Sometimes you got to work it more, but usually try to do things until they're just incorporated or just to sort of the level of texture that you're looking for. Okay, so now we have to put our dough into plastic wrap and let it rest at room temperature for about 30 minutes before we can actually roll it out and use the cookie cutter and turn it into cookies. So, use my same spatula here. It's a very sticky dough. Try to get as much as I can off of my fingers here, but I think it's probably about as good as I'm going to be able to do. And there we have it. So 30 minutes has elapsed, and now we're going to flour a surface, and we're going to cut the dough into 4 pieces or quarters, and then we're going to roll out each piece and use a cookie cutter to cut basically the shapes out of the pieces for the cookies. And we'll keep folding whatever's left over into the next batch, and we'll do basically 4 times or 4 quarters. So I've just put some flour down directly on my tabletop surface here. I'm just going to spread the flour out. And I've got more flour here at the side in case I need it. So we'll take our dough that's been resting. I'm just going to put it over here on the side. Now I can already tell it's very sticky. It's going to need more flour, so I'm going to put some on it basically right now, because as soon as I try to do anything with it, it's just going to stick if I don't. Okay. Now I'm going to separate about a quarter of the dough. I'm just going to start by sort of doing it by hand here, just picking up the flour as I need to. Now I'm going to grab a rolling pin. Just before I start, I'm going to put a bit of flour on the rolling pin as well to help so it doesn't stick. Just kind of roll slow at first. We want to get it to about 1/8 of an inch thickness. And you see if it's really starting to stick. It seems to still be. Just keep adding flour in basically onto the rolling pin until you get it to not stick again. It's being a bit difficult. So you might have to keep adding flour so that it stops sticking and coming up. Okay, so it's about the right thickness, so I'm going to grab my cookie cutter. And what we'll do is try to get the best cuts that we can. So this dough is very fragile, so what I might do is try to get a little spatula or something to help pick it up so I don't completely wreck it. Because as you can see, even if I'm trying to remove the excess dough here, it's just kind of mashing up. Okay, so try some spatula here and just see if this helps at all with getting these out. Get a little bit of flour on here too. Okay, I'm going to transfer this over to the baking sheet. So lessons learned on this one, it definitely needs a lot more flour to be able to actually hold together properly. So I'm going to add another quarter in, and this time, because I got a bigger space, I think I'm going to roll out a bigger piece, so I don't have to do this 3 more times. Maybe I can get it done in 2 more times, and then we'll get to the finished part where we're going to go put it into the oven. So this is the second time I've rolled it out, and it's going a lot better. So a few things I learned from the first one. One, you need to do a lot more flour. 2, make the dough a little bit thicker. I think I had it a bit too thin. And 3, one of the tricks I find is actually when you go down to do it with your cookie cutter, press it, and actually while you still have it there, that's when you can kind of remove the dough a lot easier and actually slide out the individual cut cookie. And if you do it right, then you don't even need to use the spatula. Ooh, this one I'm butchering a little bit here, but you see how it comes out a lot nicer, and then you can just move it one at a time directly over to your baking sheet. So as you cut the cookies out, the recipe calls for parchment lined baking sheets, and I see why. The cookies are very sticky and very delicate, so it makes a lot of sense. And then what we're going to do is preheat the oven to 350 degrees, and once it beeps, we'll put them in, and you let them go for 7 to 8 minutes, but kind of keep an eye on them. As soon as they start to get like a nice golden brown, take them out, and then once they cool, we'll basically put jam in them and make them into like these little jam-filled cookie sandwiches. So we pulled the cookies out of the oven. Now we're going to let them cool. Then we're going to put some jam on basically one layer or one side, and then put the other side on top, and we'll have ourselves some jam cookies. Then the last piece is you can dip it in a bit of icing sugar if you want to, and again, that's just preference if you like that or not. Okay, so the cookies have come down to be cool enough to put the jam on. So they're suggesting you spread it on. I'm kind of thinking in this case I'm going to try this first, is to use a teaspoon and kind of put a glob in the middle, and then just give it a light spread with the back of the spoon. So I'm going to give that a shot first and see if that works well. So I used a star cookie cutter because it was what I kind of had on hand, but I'm thinking for these types of cookies with the jam, probably using like a more circular style cookie shape would be a better option. It doesn't really got to be super pretty here because you're going to put one on top and sandwich it together, but you do want to get a bit of jam in every bite, and so that's why it's important. So I could try using like a knife or something else, but I have a feeling that's going to be more difficult. Spoon's probably the best option, at least for this type of cookie shape, like the star style, but I'm also not a cookie master, so let's see here. And I'm just putting enough in so that it kind of, there's a bit there, there's a decent sized layer, but it's not super full. So I'm finding about a half a teaspoon, maybe a little more, maybe closer to like 3/4 of a teaspoon. And what seems to be working well is you put it in the middle, get a bit out to the sides, and then kind of just try to layer it or spread it even a bit in the middle. Anyways, I'm going to finish this up, and once they're done, we'll go back and show you putting the other cookies on, and then we'll go through and we'll dip. Okay, so I finished putting jam on the one side or one layer of cookies. So now we're just going to basically cover them. I'm actually just going to check here because I think some of these might have stuck together just a touch. Okay. So let's push it down so that the jam's in there good. And as you can see, got ourselves a nice jam-filled cookie. Then what I'm going to do is get some icing sugar and just do a light dip, one side and the other side. And put it back down, and there you have it.